We've been utterly lied to about our history and our origins through scientism. Our timeline is completely messed up. We have no idea who we are or when we are. And we barely even understand where we are, considering all the deceptions around, the heliocentric model and the rest.
Well, the real danger is the fact that we are heading toward a post-human apocalypse.
There may be a connection between modern-day abductions and the ancient tale of the Nephilim.
If we don't understand the Genesis 3:15 narrative, the Messiah will crush your head, you will bruise his heel. That is the gateway to the entire rest of the biblical prophetic narrative.
Pergamum. They're in the city where Satan's throne is. Satan is the Prince of Rome. The Prince of Rome is Jupiter. The Prince of Rome is Zeus, because Satan is Zeus.
The end game, which is Armageddon, is going to be the emergence of a new golden age in which the gods walk openly among mankind as they did in the world before the flood of Noah. And there's no stopping it. It will happen.
Hey, what's up, guys? We want to welcome you to our podcast, and we are very excited today. We have a special guest with us, JT. You may know him as JT Follows JC, and you can find him on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. So welcome, bro. How you doing?
Better than the last time. The last time we talked, I could barely enunciate a word because I had a cold, but I'm doing much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's great. Hey, so we'll just jump right into it. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are. How'd you get to the point to where you just started making content, and just how you started getting into the research that you do?
Well, like I said, I'm 45 years old. I grew up in a Christian home, pretty much in suburbia, kind of like just a normal every town USA. And my parents took me to church every Sunday. I went to Christian schools. I even graduated from Liberty University. And so I kind of grew up as a believer. And I would say that I've always believed. I mean, I think everybody has their points of is this really true? I've been taught this way. But I never really doubted for too long that Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life. And I believe that. But at the same time, when you grow up kind of in a Christian home, it's easy to kind of walk that lukewarm line, because it's I think going to Baptist schools, I always was just presented with these are the rules. You don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do this. And when you do, we're going to punish you. And so when you see Christianity from that point of view, you usually typically just try to well, how close can I get to the line and not get punished? And I think that I grew up with a lot of people like that. And it's almost like knowing what's true versus understanding what's true. And I just think as a young person, I just had this narrow focus on what I thought life was supposed to be. You go as American, it's obviously first you get, you need to be a Christian. I believe I didn't want to go to hell. So I accepted Jesus, got baptized very young. But then as I got out of school, I thought, okay, so what do? You get a job, you get a wife, you get 2.5 kids, you get the white picket fence, and then you have everything you want. And then it's happily ever after, except for, it sounds stupid saying that, obviously, because it is stupid, because obviously there's a lot of life, to live after that. And then what do you do? But I think once I got all the things that I thought I wanted or should have, it was almost I had the idea of what it was supposed to look like, but have no idea what it was actually supposed to be like.
Right.
And when I got all those things, I started to almost get this anxiety about me of whoa, what if I lost some of these things? I got all the things I wanted, but it almost felt like life is this, just knowing as I was getting older, and, you start to get your health starts to break down a little bit. I was a little bit of an athlete in my 30s, doing races and running and cycling and all those kind of things. And as I was getting injured, I was just well, I guess I can't do this forever. So what am I going to do forever? And then you obviously, you have debts in the family, and then you're thinking is this the best it's ever going to be? That I had that thought in my head. And I think right around the 2020 election, I just was wow, 2020, obviously the pandemic, all the things. And then I went through a divorce. Like, I'm not in my own making. Like, I never wanted that to happen.
That's
And so I
tough.
remember feeling like all the things I thought were stable in my life were just like completely unstable. And I really had to, at that point, like question what was true, what I believed. And basically I had to cry out to God, like, God, what if I lose all the things I'm worried about losing? I almost felt like I got that message from God, like, yeah, you might lose those things. You probably will. And what are you going to do if you do? And I thought, like, well, I guess as long as I'm good with you and I'm doing what's right, I haven't put you first in my life, so I'm going to try that. And if I can sleep well at night, knowing that I'm doing all I can for you, then that's good enough for me. And I did that, and I just I gave God all the things I couldn't control, and then I just took care of the little things in front of me. Started to read my Bible again with fresh eyes, and God changed me. Like I never had that kind of real transformational change, because I never thought I was that bad. But only I know how I felt inside, and like when I had that change where I really believed. I started reading my Bible with fresh eyes. I started to say everyone's lying to me except for God. I started reading my Bible like it is the truth. And then after that, I started to try to cut certain things out of my life, because I felt like a closeness with God that I never had before. And I felt like I really felt demonic attacks, especially at the very beginning of my journey.
Right.
And I started to question, like, where did these things come from? Is this possibly something I invited into my house? Almost like the whole mythos of the vampire.
Right.
Where like, I can't come in unless you invite me in. Yeah. Invite me in. Well, I invited probably a lot of those things in at times in my life. And looking back, I'm like, okay, so if I did do that, I need to figure out how it happened. And then when I learned a little bit about it, I felt compelled to start telling people about this kind of stuff. And yeah, before you know it, I got on TikTok. My brother invited me to check out TikTok, and I was just like, what is this? This is like 13-year-old girls stuff. Like, I'm 40 years old, man. Like, what do you?
Right.
Like, why would I care about this? Until, like I said, I started to see some conspiracy stuff, some Illuminati stuff, and some some YouTube stuff, like the YouTube content I started to consume at that point of symbolism, like decoding things, and I couldn't get enough. So I was reading my Bible, I was watching, I was going down the rabbit hole, and as I was learning things, eventually I made my first TikTok, and I had 3 followers. I think I got 10,000 views, and then I had 1,000 followers, and then I made a couple more, and then before you know, I had 20,000 followers, and then I was and then it was the cool thing was as I was waking up, I had certain people trying to say, as I was mostly just doing very just Bible-based stuff. I was really saying, I finally understand what the scriptures are saying. So I was explaining them to people, and they're like, well, you really changed. You think you might go into the ministry? And I was like, well, I mean, I'm getting divorced. So I was like, I don't really think I'm qualified to do anything like that. I don't really think I have a place in ministry. And then before you know it, it's like God did give me this ministry that I said I had no idea. God provided a door, provided a way, opened a door that I didn't even know existed. And then before you know it, you start doing this, and before you know, I'm doing podcasts, making a movie, and obviously doing this as much as I can, because I just can't get enough of it. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember it was probably around 2021 or something. I remember seeing you, and this was before I was even content for the faith. I had this other little account, and that just got shadow banned, and I just bagged that one. It started fresh. But I remember seeing you. I'm like, who is this guy? Because you were real excited about what you were talking about, and I think you were talking about the Book of Revelation. But I just remember you're the OG TikToker. You know what I mean? But I just remember also how you said when I first started getting into it, I thought TikTok was just these little kids just dancing and these girls doing dances and stuff. But I mean, it's I've learned a lot, met a lot of cool people on this platform. But so just kind of keeping it going. So you you have kind of changed your mind about a few things, and one of it being just cosmology. I know that probably a couple years ago, I went on a live with you, and we were kind of talking, and we were just chatting a little bit about you, and you just seemed a little resistant and stuff like that. And what do you think changed for you as far as just looking into these things that the church just has nothing to do with nowadays? They don't want to talk about it. So what made you kind of dig into it more?
Well, I think that, I mean, I guess like this should go without saying, but I think a lot of people, who don't know us, like it's funny, like you saying like I'm some OG. It's like I just started doing this. I might have started like a month before you, like, and and I guess it is. It's just like I think some of us are like we're all works in progress, right? Like, and I would say I'm still at one of those. So like I said, obviously I get a little bit anxiety when I hear people like are really hanging on every word I say, and it's like, listen, I am still. Don't ever just trust me fully. Look back at what I say.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that God just, I mean, I feel like sometimes it's like the first bit of faith is just that first step, right? Because it's kind of like if God said, I don't want you to go speak on TikTok until you know everything.
Right.
Well, you would never, obviously none of us would be on this app.
Right.
We couldn't do it. So it's like, if you think about like, even like Peter messed up a lot. And I think that's obviously why we love the Apostle Peter, because we can obviously see ourselves. We can relate to that. It's like, but I think he was zealous in the right way. And I think some of us have been wrong, but for the right reasons and going out there. And I think that I felt like I wanted to start talking about the end times things. I think probably because I was seeing 2020 and I was seeing all the signs. And so that was kind of my main focus. And I think obviously I have like, we all come into the content creation with our backgrounds, right? So I like comic books. I watch the Marvel movies. I love, I've watched every movie almost. Like, so I always have those references built in. So the first bit of content I was making was end times prophecy. And then I was doing like decoding like comic book movies and comics and that kind of stuff. So when I get presented with like flat earth stuff, I'm like, first of all, I have people in my, who I know locally who are saying how stupid it all is. And so like, you can't help but like be biased in that kind of way. And then I think I used to get frustrated because I was trying to talk about something else. And then somebody would be like, what about the earth? What about the shit? The earth's flat. What about the dome? And I'm just like, well, we're not talking about that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I did probably get resistant at first. And I think at one point I saw like, a video that actually seemed like it debunked the flat earth stuff. And I was just like, well, that's good enough for me. I don't have to look into this. So they were like, I'm dumb. I don't need to look into that now. But then I think it wasn't until like, I've kind of rested my, my account and like, obviously my life now that the Bible's true. And I'm going to judge everything else versus what the Bible says. And I think it wasn't until like, I'm not sure who it was, or if it was one of you guys, or it was like just an account that said, whether the earth's flat or not, I'm not sure. But what I am sure is there's waters above, because here's what it says right here. I started to think about that. and then people were saying, well, the Bible seems pretty clear that the sun goes around the earth, not vice versa. And so so obviously once you start to look into those things, and then you do like research what it says about the firmament and the waters above, and then there's a million scriptures. I think there's 50 scriptures about the earth's not movable. And you're like, wait a minute, like, can I still believe what I did believe and say that I believe the Bible? And I think that's what really came down to it. It's like, I said that I believed it, but do I believe it? And then I really had to decide who do I trust? And then I think I praise God, I decided, well, I'm going to just trust what God says. And then the more I researched it, I think the thing that really kind of tipped it off for me was that being challenged in that sort of way. And then also like not believing in the moon landing before this, but then finding out like why do you believe that the Earth's a ball anyways? Well, because I got a picture of it. Here's the picture. Well, then you find out, wait a minute. Supposedly they took that picture on the way to the moon. So you're like, all right, that's tough. That's a tough one for me now because I don't think they went. And then you look it up and it's like, no, that's not actually a real picture. And then you're like, wait a minute, all the pictures are not real.
Yeah.
So then you really have to decide. It's like, okay, so if I only really believe because of the pictures, the video, I don't believe it anymore. Okay, well now it's just like it's easy one for me. It's like I'll just believe what the Bible says, and yeah, I would like to say that if you can give me credit for anything, not for being right all the time, but being willing to admit that I was wrong about certain things and being wrong and just because we care what's true. So like I think that's where I'd like to just stand at is that I might be wrong about some things I'm making videos about right now, but like I like to say that I'm not going to be too prideful to try to stick behind that wrong position in order to be right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, because I've changed my mind a whole bunch of times, you know, in the past, and it's a lot of people, they're really cemented in their beliefs, and honestly, I think that if you're that way, then how can you learn anything new? It seems like it's kind of like what you said. It's like a pride thing where you already think you know it all. If you're so cemented, you know, where if people get presented this new information and like how you say they're just nah, you know, kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, what was it you think? Because that's kind of what got me too with the scripture, and ultimately that's what sealed the deal for me. But what was something else besides the fake pictures and CGI that just kind of caught your attention, where people use this as an absolute proof, and then you saw something that was contrary to that?
I think I remember one day it was I was looking some stuff up and I was trying to figure out how high they said the atmosphere went. And there was no good answer for that. I was like, I saw like from what was like a couple thousand feet to what was it like it was like I can't remember, it was like 200,000 kilometers or something. Like it was all over the map of like how high it went. And I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't sound very like, so how does what most people would perceive based on what we know, like, or at least we've been told, there's this little layer of atmosphere and then you go pop, you get right out of it, and then all of a sudden it's floating.
Yeah.
But then when they say actually the atmosphere is 200,000 kilometers long or something, I literally found a scientific article that said that the moon is inside our atmosphere.
Yeah, I saw
and
that
I was like,
too.
Wait a minute. So I actually, in some ways, it actually kind of allowed me to believe both models a little bit, because I said, wait a minute. So what this is saying is what the Bible's saying is that these things are all inside whatever this is. So I said, maybe people are just kind of talking past each other. And I think that was when I was like, really like that. I don't think that people really know what they believe when they say they believe the heliocentric, spinning ball model.
Right.
Nobody has any idea what it says. I think people say, oh, well, the Earth spins. But I don't think they realize that supposedly it spins 1,000 miles an hour, and then it spins around the sun at a 6.6 thousand miles an hour. And then the sun is going like 600 million miles an hour. And we're doing all this at the same time. And I think what it really kind of got me was I saw a video about somebody talking about the constellations. And I think it was right around the time I was learning about the Mazzaroth, and I was learning about, how like biblically, like people think astrology is just the devil, the end. But it literally says, I think in Genesis 1:14, that God put the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky for signs first, seasons, and then days and nights. So I was like, okay, so if God put these things in the sky, it's for us to see them. And if we were going that fast, they obviously would change. Like that doesn't work. So I really almost thought like, wait a minute, if these constellations are there and they're fixed and they move, like, and obviously you can not can you set your watch by them, but you can. Obviously that's what the sky is. It's like a clock. And it's like, if that's not showing us that this place is stable, all these other things are moving. And like, again, I think I don't think there's any argument really against the Polaris. It's like when you find out there's a star that actually doesn't move, it just stays in the same place all the time, and all the other stars move around. And you're like, okay, so we like live in a planetarium, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that to me, that was like, all right, I don't think there's a scientific explanation that I could possibly buy that if they say all those things and that could appear the same way. I think that was kind of the end of it. And then so ever since then, like obviously the images of like zooming in from very far, you think something went over the horizon and actually no, it didn't. You just can't see that far. The horizon, like the horizon goes up to your perspective, meet your eyes. Water does meet level. It's just those kind of things. It just it just kind of confirmed to me, like, yeah, they're just making stuff up.
Yeah, their excuse for Polaris not ever moving is it's just far away. But then there's clusters and stars all around it that are supposedly millions of times further away, and they move from horizon to horizon. So, yeah,
that's the thing. It's like, I guess that's what people don't understand. It's like that. I think there's I think it's the Dendera zodiac is like the oldest one we know of. It's from ancient Egypt, and it shows the constellations as they are. And it's like people don't get. It's like you could still see the same stars. Honestly, if you were spinning like we are, they'd all look like streaks in the sky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't even look still. You ever see the time lapse? That's what it would look like because we'd be moving so fast. But they don't. But pointed this way, like obviously the Big Dipper, like if one's closer than the other one, you might actually look like they start to look like they're getting closer to each other because of perspective.
Right.
And so our perspective is always the same, which makes you think, hey, if our perspective is always, that's because we're still
at rest,
just like the Bible says.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
It doesn't just say that like once or twice. It's repeatedly. It's a consistent thing all throughout the Bible. It's on a foundation. It's at rest. And that's what we experience.
Well, you're saying, like I said, the Dendera zodiac. I want to say that it's 4,000 years old. Okay, so you're telling me that they have not changed in 4,000 years? Oh, because they're really far away?
Yeah, that's their excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like that makes no sense.
No.
Yeah, you put millions of miles on something, and then everything just makes sense. Apparently.
Well, that is the scientific method. That's not scientific at all. Is to say, blah blah blah, a million years, 60 million years, a billion years, and then everything seems plausible because I don't have to fill in all the gaps in like the gap that's is wider than you could even fathom.
Right.
Because I think most people don't quite understand that they cannot grasp that much time, and then they don't realize the scientists can't grasp that much time, and also that's not science because science is supposed to be repeatable. Like you can't repeat something that's that has, obviously you can't do that in a lab.
So I want to reel you back in for a second, but you said something about the Mazzaroth. What is that? Well,
the Mazzaroth is like, I think I got a book. It was called The Mystery of the Mazzaroth by Tim Warner, which is funny because he's a ball earther and he had like this book about the Mazzaroth. That being said, the Mazzaroth is like, so it mentions in the book of Job, it mentions the Pleiades, it mentions Orion's belt, I believe. It mentions a few of these kind of like the constellations. I think even Psalm 19 talks about the day to day, the night to night, the basically the firmament, the sky pours out speech without giving any words. It's saying there's tents for the sun to rest in, and it's like it's very clear. Like once you understand the prophetic language, that is literally talking about the zodiac. And again, so I think the difference is for most Christians, they would know that's satanic, the zodiac satanic, because the only knowledge they have about the zodiac is horoscopes.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like you could use the Bible for idolatry if you're just, which probably lots of churches do, where you're picking out this one scripture just for me because this is supposed to lead my day. This one scripture that says I'm going to have fame and fortune in it. You know what I mean? Like that's what the zodiac, that's what the horoscopes are. It's like that I'm letting the stars dictate like how am I supposed to live my life and the decisions I make. But at the end of the day, like the Bible, just like the stars in the sky, are pointing to Jesus. The story is about Jesus in the sky, in your Bible. And so like what you need to do is try to understand your position in that you're very small. Like you can play a part in this, but this is not about you. It's always about the glory of God. And so the zodiacs actually literally point to Jesus. It's like, I think they say like, so Virgo. I'm one of those people who believe that Revelation 12 talks about the signs that were in the sky when the great signs in the heavens when Jesus was born was Virgo. And it was like, so if you think about even like the Old Testament prophecy about the branch, the woman holding the branch, like that's literally what Virgo is. So it mentions all these signs that Jesus was born on September 11th, 3 BC, because literally they can, again, the sky is a clock. You can actually go back and see when these things would have happened based on other historical data we have about when Jesus was born. And so but what interesting enough, all these things have been promised throughout, and they all lead to it. I think it's even like Aries is the ram. You just think about the ram, like that when God was going to tell Abraham to sacrifice Isaac,
right?
He provided a ram. Well, this is crazy. So when Jesus was crucified on the cross, the Bible mentions there was an eclipse at like 6:00 in the evening. Literally, when that happened, Aries would have been in the sky right behind him. Unless it's like basically the sky would have went black just so Aries could have been exposed, like as Jesus being the sacrifice.
That'd have been a sight
it's
to
like,
see.
The whole thing is like, I guess you think about it like this, like these are the things that obviously the sky is, the stars are supposed to be there to tell you. And if you think about it, like, we talk about like planets, right? Wandering stars. Isn't it interesting how they're all named after these false gods? But the other stars, obviously the majority of the stars that did not fall are not fallen angels. Those ones are fixed, and they're telling a story about our God, the King.
Yeah.
And I think once you understand that, it's like, is it perhaps like, is that one of the reasons why people ask, well, why would they lie about the shape of the earth?
Right.
Why would they lie and say you should not research the zodiac at all? Because they don't want you to know these certain things. They all point back to intelligent design. They point back to a creator who took very good care about telling us about him.
Yeah. I know you looked in a little bit of that too, Shane. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, he's right. What, from my understanding of the Mazzaroth, it's basically the Mazzaroth came first. The Zodiac came later. The Mazzaroth is the Hebrew version of the Zodiac, right? And it basically is saying that the gospel of Jesus Christ is literally written in the stars. And there's a couple of good books on it. He mentioned a good one. It's unfortunate that the author is a Glober. That broke my heart.
It is weird. It is weird because it's funny when you see like like how the Zodiac's supposed to work in the other model, and it's just like, this doesn't make a lick of sense when they show the way the sun going around, or the Earth going around the sun. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Right. Yeah, none. And you mentioned something about the branch. I was just reading that in one of these books here. I want to try and find it real quick because it just really relates to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, while you're finding that, so you had said something else about the wandering stars, which we call them planets, but I've talked to certain people too, and they get so hung up because what we've been shown this model. You got the sun, and then you got all the planets, and they're just lined up behind the sun, right? And they're rotating. But something that someone has told me before, but I could see Saturn in the sky, just because they can see it up there, they think, well, that means that we're a globe. You know what I mean? Like what?
Right. Well, I think that we don't like we perceive things like, well, I think without us being told this is a sphere, we see the luminaries in the sky and we assume they're spheres too, because that's what they tell us. And obviously when let's just say they're edited, they're they're cleaned up, they make them look like they're cylindrical. I mean, they look like spheres the way that they're presented. They probably even put a little shine on it because it's like they probably even mess with the shadows to make it look more like a sphere.
Yeah, right.
Like the truth is, as obviously like following people like David, I got a telescope at one point too. Like I think when I got interest in the Mazzaroth, I got one of these, and sadly, where I come from, the stars are not all that good over here. It's like light pollution or whatever, yeah. But like we can't see too many stars. But the funny thing, like getting your telescope, and I'm sure you can do this from any place probably in the world, go look for the brightest star in the sky. And unfortunately, it's not what they tell you it is because it's Venus. So Venus is supposedly a planet, but it's way brighter than all the other stars in the sky, right. Even the real stars. And supposedly it's just reflecting the sun, which again does not make sense unless Venus is literally like a mirror.
Yeah,
because it's made of mirrors because like it looks so bright, and then you look at Venus, you look at Mars, you look at some of these other planets, and they dance like they're in water, and they don't look like anything you've ever seen. They don't look like the pictures they've shown you. And so the real question is, why? Is it because my telescope's not that good, or is it because I don't have Photoshop?
Yeah,
bingo. You don't have Photoshop.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that got me when I would see stuff that Shane was posting and other people with the stars. When I first saw the first star I've ever seen that was just a live video, I was just thinking to myself, that was just one of those moments where you just had this revelation. You're like, yeah, that's water. That's straight up water.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like a light in water. And I'm like, okay, I believe it.
Yeah. They'll try to blame that on, the atmosphere turbulence. Like the air can be turbulent. But if the best thing I can compare it to, I remember when I was a kid, like when I go to the pool at nighttime and like go swim underwater and look up at the street lamp, it looks just like a star through a telescope. I mean, it would be the same thing. The little rays it looks like it's spinning really fast, but it's not. It's just the light shining through the water and all ripply and stuff. It's the same exact effect through a telescope. You can't tell me that's atmosphere turbulence. I mean,
well, I think that of course, the more I've looked into this stuff, I found like, okay, so if it was just the atmosphere, well, why are all the patterns different for every different star,
right,
or different planet? They all ripple differently. Yeah. They're not the same. So like I had an experience this past summer. I was like hanging out with my wife on the deck, and we were just relaxing after like kind of like a long day. And in the summertime, obviously the sun's up longer, and we have these pots like that have water in them. And I was just looking on like the eave of the house, and I just saw this light, and it was just twinkling. And I was like, and of course, now that after I'd had the telescope, I said, that looks exactly the same. And so what was happening was that the sun was beaming down and hitting the water in this pot, and it was just shooting up, and it was just dancing right on like on the soffit of the house, like running under the gutter. And it was like, it was so cool because that is exactly what it looks. I mean, I'm not saying it's close. I'm saying that's exactly what they look like. Exactly what they look like. So it's like, so to me, it's like, again, I think this is what the problem is that a lot of Christians, who sit in the pews on Sundays, they are told not to believe what their eyes tell them. They're told not to believe what the Bible tells them. And so once you cite, it's funny, like, it's like a lot of things with the Bible. It's like that, let's just say you believe the Bible first. You'll start to see the evidence for the Bible being true all over the place. And I think that's the same thing where it's like, once you're willing to accept, all right, I might get called crazy, I might get called stupid if I say I believe this, but then you see the evidence everywhere. And I think that's kind of like, that's probably like the whole idea of like that, I've really felt thankful, like doing what I do. It was like in the book of John, when Jesus heals the blind man, the guy was born blind, And it's like, that's who we all are. That we were all born blind until Jesus gave us eyes to see. But you know what? You had to believe. So once you believed, then you could see. Like, it's almost like your faith has made you healed. So like now you can actually see the things that were never hidden.
Yeah, I like that.
I guess that's like the whole thing. Is like, I love hashtag hidden in plain sight, because everything is hidden in plain sight to someone who's blind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But once you can see, it's like, wow. I mean, like you don't even realize the depths of like the just the things we could not see that were like right in front of us all the time.
It's literally like the world totally changes. You literally see the whole world differently once you wake up to these things. I mean, everything.
Mm-hmm.
When I went out on the on the lake with the boat this summer, my dad's got a boat, a pontoon, and we'll take it out, and the whole family will get together and we'll go out on the boat and just fish a little, mainly just ride around, cruise around on the lake and hang out. But there was it was sprinkling rain, but the sun was still out, like no clouds in the sky, but it was sprinkling rain. And I remember watching those little drops hitting the lake, and the sun, the way the sun was reflecting off of them, I swear it looked like twinkling stars. Just stars.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was like, man, there's there's so many different ways water could play into the stars, and what we see.
And that's real science. That's repeatable, like what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
You could repeat stuff like that.
Yeah. And then there's the reflection of the sunlight coming across the water. It comes straight at you. That is impossible on a ball or on a curved surface. You will not get light traveling in straight lines. Nothing does. Mm-hmm. No reflection will.
Mm-hmm.
It's distorted, like those mirrors on the school bus that are curved. You know how everything's distorted in them? Well, that's what it would look like when you're looking at the moon or the sunlight's reflection on the ocean or a large body of water. Everything would be distorted, but it's not. It's a perfect mirrored image. You only get that on a flat surface.
Well, isn't it also, David, that there's certain types of telescope that the way that is it refracting versus what's the other kind of telescopes that
there's two primary kinds, refracting and reflecting, but there's a lot of different types of reflecting telescopes. But the interesting thing about all of them, they all use curved lenses.
Right. So that would make it appear that what you're seeing through the telescope looks like a sphere.
And there's there's
wow.
Right. Yeah. That's an aha moment where you're like, okay, so that's why it looks like a sphere.
That's interesting.
Instead of just a circle.
That's interesting.
They make some of these higher end telescopes, or you can buy a field flattener for your telescope. It's made to correct that. And when you look at, some of these wandering stars, the planets with a field flattener on your telescope, they look like flat discs. They no longer,
right.
They don't look as spherical. And
right. So I think that's one of those things where, like, again, that I learned that and I was like, huh. So why, so they clean up an image and still leave it distorted. Right. You know what I mean? Like, so they Photoshop all the imperfections up, but they leave the distortion from the lens. Yeah. Well, that seems convenient. And again, like when they go up to the International Space Station or wherever outer space is, and then they use like a GoPro lens or whatever they use with the fisheye, and you're like, okay, so if it is curved, well, put it this way, like you get two kinds of answers. It's too big to see the curve, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's either too big to see the curve, or obviously it's curved because look at this picture, and you're like, okay, so I would actually respect. I might actually be more likely to believe they say, oh, it's too big. It's too big to see the curve from this height.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, because I think that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson said. But instead, they show us very obviously fisheye lens video and pictures from certain heights, and you're like, okay, so now if you take a look at the metal around the metal's bent, everything's curved.
Yes.
Okay, so like if you don't, like, obviously if you're dishonest in that kind of way, dishonest by omission to say that this is a distorted image, well, then you're a liar.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a lie by omission to say that. And again, it's like, to me, it's like, thou dost protest too much. Like if you're trying to show a curve when there's not one, well, then I'm just going to call you a liar because you are one.
That's interesting because I've got a really good friend of the family, and he was telling me that, you know, we've all drank the Kool-Aid. We're part of this flat Earth cult, and because he just knows it's a globe. And I'm like, well, how do you know it's a globe? Because I've flown in an airplane. I've seen it. Shane. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we were texting about this for weeks, and I mean, he'd get mad about it, and it's got to the point now he won't even speak anymore. Good friend of the family won't talk to any of us because some of my family are flat earthers now too. But yeah, he said his proof was he has saw the curve from an airplane. He knows it's round, and but the funny thing is, the day before I sent him a video of high altitude amateur balloon footage, 20 miles high, flat, perfectly flat. And you know what he told me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's not high enough to see the curve. But then
what was he flying
the next
in?
day, he told me he saw it from only 5 miles up. Oh man!
Wow.
Yeah,
that's cognitive dissonance at its finest, right there.
They will lie to themselves.
Yeah, I was telling Ricardo today that I saw. It was like something on Facebook, and somebody was showing like I think it was the skyline of Chicago from 50 miles away, and you could see basically the bottoms of the buildings. And then one of the top comments was this lady saying the flat Earth is a psyop. They want to see who's programmable, and I was kind of thinking like it could not be further from the truth because it's like obviously the program is obviously everything they taught us in school.
Yeah.
So you think they taught you right in school and then just decided to throw this psyop out there so you could be tricked? Again, like it should go without saying that people who are flat earthers now believe the earth was once a ball, a spinning ball. Mm-hmm. So like we had to be convinced, and it's like, for the most part, there are no pats on the back to come out as a flat earther. I mean, it's like, this is not, and this is one of the reasons why like people around me who I know probably have apprehensions, and these are the kind of people that get mad when you ask questions. Again, before I got to where I am, I just used to ask questions because that's what I do about everything.
Right.
And once they started to get mad at me, I was kind of like, whoa, like, I guess there's no answer then. I mean, like if you had an answer, you would not get upset because you'd calmly tell me the truth, and I'd be like, okay. Again, like I said, because I was ready to just say, it's a ball. I can go back my business. I can go back to researching whatever else I was researching.
Right.
But they got mad. And so like understanding like me, who's skeptical about everything, like I had to be really convinced, and I had to get to the point where I'm like, prove it to me. And it's not necessarily proving the flatness, but it's really like almost there's no proof for the ball. It's like you find out there's no proof for like the things that we're told about the ball part. And I think that like, so when somebody says this is somebody showing somebody who's programmable, it's like, I know I'm the opposite of programmable because I question everything. I'm always like, where are you getting that from? Like, why does it like that? Why, what, all the questions. And I think that's the thing. It's like that there's no, people were telling me, if you say the earth is flat, then they're not going to believe you. Your credibility is going to be questioned about everything else you say.
Right.
And I don't disagree with that. Like I do not disagree with that to the normies.
Yeah.
The normies are going to say, you probably think the earth's flat too.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm probably thinking like, you've never looked into it, have you?
Yeah.
Because just like every other conspiracy we talk about, they're all crazy until you actually look it up and you're like, man, that wasn't even hard to find.
I know.
Yeah.
And that was like, it's like, you can tell people about Freedom of Information Act stuff. Like literally like, it's like straight up government documents. No. And you're like, it's like, literally, it's like, I can show you where to look it up on like this .gov site that tells you exactly what I'm telling you. And they'll still reject it. So it's like, so if that kind of person will reject anything else I say because I say what the Bible says and obviously what my eyeballs say, well, I can't control what they believe.
Right.
You know, I'm not here to change everyone's mind. I'm here to plant seeds, and I'm here to just and mostly I hope to just get people to ask the questions themselves and go look it up. Like if you're willing to go look things up with an open mind, not already knowing it all, really realizing you really don't know a lot. I think once it means you realize you've been lied to and you start looking things up, you really start to think, what else they lied about? And I think it's probably where most of us came to. We're like, they really lied about the earth?
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. It blows your mind at first. Like I literally had a full-on anxiety attack the day I became a flat earther. I mean, my heart was just pounding and I couldn't believe it. My head was spinning. I'm like,
yeah,
no way, in the whole world? Like everybody fell for it, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it. I literally had one of those Neo moments, like from the Matrix, like
he's gonna pop.
Literal awakening moment. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome. But yeah, like what you said, people think they know everything. And the ones that think that, if you actually listen to them speak, they are the most ignorant. They're the dumbest. And that's why. It's like what we were talking about the other night. They're old wineskins. They got no room for new wine. But even, Isaac Newton, who was supposed to be, he was an astronomer, a brilliant mathematician, scientist, and I think he was a Christian by some of his quotes. He said it best. What we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean. In comparison, we know a little drop compared to an entire ocean. That's our knowledge. Really, it is.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like, I think from the very beginning, growing up in Christian schools, and obviously rejecting evolution, knowing that's a complete lie. That if God created us in His image, well, clearly He didn't start with an animal first. I mean, like that's downright blasphemous to say that He did. So knowing that I already questioned some of the science, and then when they started talking about Big Bangs, all the timelines, the dinosaur stuff, that's obviously very sus.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you start to talk to somebody who's got an answer for everything and they're sure of it, now you smell BS because you're like, because I know you can't know everything, and I think that's why I guess that's why I try to, like, when I make videos, I try to ask questions, and I want people to ask their own questions, because if I ever start being sure about things that I couldn't know for sure, well, then you should know you can't trust me.
Yeah,
there you go.
And I think that's the problem with the science, is like that science is supposed to be trust me, bro. Now, like that's literally what it is. Trust me, bro. That's my source. And like so if I question your source, now I'm a science denier, when it's like literally science is supposed to be about trying to prove the science wrong, being testable and repeatable. And it's like it really is. It's like that. I think certain people I don't think a lot of people are stupid. I think a lot of people are willfully ignorant.
At least,
we're all ignorant about the things we don't know, but we almost don't trust ourselves to be able to figure things out. When like science is basically about observation, so it's like, well, I'm observing a different phenomenon. Can you explain to me yours?
Yeah.
Your hypothesis a little better?
Exactly.
And when they get upset, you're like, all right, now I know that you're lying to me. And that's how a lot of people are lying to you, when it's kind of like a child. If your kid asks you a question about something and you can explain it to them, like you wouldn't ask them, even like I said, there pretty much is no dumb questions when it comes to like somebody doesn't know something they want to know. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, especially when they sound dumb. Because if you don't know it, you shouldn't go to bed not knowing it. It really is when you question somebody who's telling you the truth, they don't mind explaining it to you. When you question somebody who's lying to you, they get mad real fast.
Yeah.
Or if their belief is very insecure,
right?
Yeah.
Then they get upset, because I think that's what people don't. I think that's what it really comes down to. These are heart issues where, like, the shape of the earth ultimately at the end of the day. I mean, how much does it really matter? I don't know. I mean, obviously that's up for debate, but I guess the point is, it's like, it's why we're clinging to the view we are.
Yeah.
I think that is really, because it's like, it's because you've decided to trust something, and I'm questioning that source now.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the issue, because if you question that source, then they have to start asking all the questions we've asked. what if they're lying about that? What if they're lying about other things?
Yeah.
Because then you know that they're lying about other things, and then you can't sleep at night, and then you have to actually decide who you can trust. I think that's what it always comes down to. And I think at the end of the day, if we found out one day, oh, well, but we get up to the great white throne, God says, yeah, actually that was an allegory. It's really a spinning ball. And he'd be like, he would not be mad because you believed what he said, like what you thought he said.
Yeah.
And I'm confident about that. Just like a child, like you wouldn't be mad at your son if he believed something you said that was kind of sarcastic, but you took it literal.
Right.
You'd kind of be like, like that's. But you know what? If he questioned everything you said and actually believed other people, then you'd be like, all right.
Why didn't you believe me?
That's different. That's different.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit, when you were just talking about the science and being repeatable and stuff like that. Shane and I were just talking today how, these people talk about earth shine and all this stuff. And I've never been outside and just looked at the dirt and just seen it glowing or something, but apparently it just does that in make-believe outer space, or even the planets, like we were talking about Saturn and Jupiter. These are supposed to be gas giants. And so supposedly light reflects
reflective
gas. Exactly. Like you said, these things have to be made of mirrors or something to reflect that kind of light. But we're told, no, these are gas giants. And like Jupiter is like one of the brightest things out there in the night sky. And it's just reflecting a reflective gas ball. I mean,
right. Well, it's like full of storms, and I guess so. Like, would you think like how much reflection does a cloud have?
Right.
Yeah.
Like probably not that much. But
it's so insane, and it has its own gases. Now think about this: gases have their own gravity, and Jupiter's supposedly made of hydrogen and helium, primarily hydrogen and helium, and it gets its own gravity, pulls itself together and holds itself there. And not only that, but it makes these pretty little patterns in it, these little stripes in the red spot.
Mm-hmm.
How does gas know to organize itself that way in straight parallel lines? If you look at the stripes on Jupiter, they're parallel, perfectly parallel all the time. They never change. They say they're cloud bands, whatever a cloud band is, made of gas. And the sunlight is traveling, from Jupiter's 400 million miles from Earth, supposedly. And you got the sunlight going that far to reach these gases, reflecting off of them and traveling 400 million miles back to your eyes. And it's still that bright.
You literally almost have to turn your brain off to believe all that stuff.
You have to.
No, you do. Like I said, you just have to believe them, because actually that was another thing that actually got me like really thinking, because okay, so if the ancients believed planets were wandering stars, they literally believe they're stars. They don't believe they're other places like the Earth. They believe they're wandering stars.
Yeah.
If you look up what the gas giants are actually supposedly made of, they're made of hydrogen, helium, and have iron cores. Do you know what our sun is made out of?
Hydrogen.
What's that?
Hydrogen, helium, and has an iron core. Okay, so what makes them different again? Why is the sun a big ball of fire?
Right, and they're
also, how does a ball of fire burn when there's no oxygen? Like these kind of questions. Like, but like, so if it's the composition of those other planets are the same as the sun, and they're also very big, maybe they're similar. Because they're luminaries. They are made of. I mean, there is interesting something about like biblically, and even like I think ancient Egyptians believed that iron was from heaven. You ever heard that?
No.
Yeah, I want to say that King Tut had a knife or something like that, and it was made of iron, and they say it came from a meteorite. Like it literally came from heaven, and they shaped this knife out of there. And it's like there's thing about like even iron and clay. Iron is like the symbolic of like the spiritual thing, and then you think about even Jesus coming with a rod of iron. Obviously, that's very specific that iron was something different.
Yeah.
And so then you think about like I almost like made this connection. I'm not sure if it's how legit it is, but like there's this connection with obviously iron in the spiritual. Well, just think about what gas is. Isn't gas kind of like a spirit? Yeah. So you have these beings that are, you have these luminaries that are partially spirit and they're partially this tough metal. It's like, is that kind of like what angels are?
Yeah, that's a good.
Like they have this physicalness about them, but they're also spirit, so they could actually, appear and do all the things that they do as angels.
That's I never thought of it that way. You know what else they claim comes from the sky or outer space? Gold.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So isn't it supposed to come from the sun, or is something like that?
Yeah, I read some while back said it came from like some meteor storm billions of years ago. But it's just wild. But yeah,
no, I mean,
what else I thought of when you was talking about the spirit? Maybe they're gas and iron mixed together. Transformers. Mm-hmm. That's what they were. They were
the Transformers. Yeah. Well, even they have like in the Transformers movies, they have like the like in obviously the Michael Bay ones, like one of the movies called Revenge of the Fallen.
Yeah.
And where'd they come from?
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, obviously they come from this place, and it's like their home is like messed up or something, and they're cast down to earth, and they're better than us, and they've got technology.
Yeah.
Sounds like the Watchers.
The Watchers, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like these stories are like, I mean, when you first read Ecclesiastes, you really had let's all be honest. Nobody had clue what Solomon was saying when there's nothing new under the sun. No. Now we're starting to get the picture of like, wait a minute, all these stories continue to repeat. And the craziest thing is, like, I know you brought up Isaac Newton. What really is fascinating is when you find out why they started to accept the spinning ball around the sun model. All these guys like Isaac Newton and Copernicus, they're alchemists. So they didn't just, do you think that they had a spaceship to go up and see all the things? Because if you didn't know, you would think that the only reason they figured out all this stuff is because, well, obviously we have the technology. They were stupid back then. Right. But then you find out that the original people who believed in the heliocentric model believed in these sacred, like Egyptian and Babylonian texts that said very similar things, like the Kabbalah. So they had sacred texts that they drew upon to get their belief in the heavens or the cosmos. And so what you've really actually done as a Christian is accepting the authority of their sacred text over yours.
Yeah. You're 100% right. Yeah, that's.
So as far as you said that they were alchemists, for those of us that are ignorant and don't really know what that is, you want to just touch on that just for a hair?
Well, I think what most people would know about alchemy was like they could turn like base metals into gold. It's basically like the early scientists were basically like, just think about like the magicians in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of like, that's the thing about the science and obviously the spiritual things that these days they want you to think that there's this separation. They tell you back in the Dark Ages that the church said all this math and all these scientists worship the devil. They did. They weren't lying, because like if you hear like stories about like John Dee was like I think he was Queen Elizabeth's like astrologer, and he was like, a lot of people probably would even know this and they wouldn't even argue this, that science is a pursuit of some knowledge. Mm-hmm. Well, knowledge, gnosis. So think back to the Gnostics. So they're going about any means to get the knowledge they can. If you think back to way far ago, you think about the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. The serpent is what gives people knowledge, and it has not changed. So these people were going about like especially like John Dee. He was like one of the most famous scientists until he was like got into contacting angels, which obviously were fallen angels, demons, and doing divination, and that's what these people all did. It's like, it's funny, like even like the story of Isaac Newton. So how did he discover gravity? Well, of course he was sitting under a tree and an apple hit him on the head. Are you guys like children? Can I explain you this? No, he already knew things fell down. Yeah. Like everybody knows things fall to the ground. That is not how he came up with the theory of gravity. the apple is symbolic of the tree. Once again, the tree of knowledge and good and evil. If you actually look up the old Apple logos, the very first ones, it's literally Isaac Newton sitting under the tree. So what did they change that logo to? An apple with a bite out of it.
Wow.
You guys understand what that means? Do you remember when they sold the first Apple computer and it was $666.66?
Yeah.
Do you think these are coincidences? Like, no, that is what they're telling you without telling you. Like that is where this knowledge came from. It comes from another spiritual place. So alchemy, yes, it's a form of witchcraft. That's straight up what it is.
I know that you'll probably know this, but there's a quote I remember. I think it's in like that first Thor movie, and they're looking at the constellations, and he said something about magic and science, and science is just. Do you know what I'm talking about? He says like, magic.
Yeah. He said, your ancestors called it magic. You call it science. Where I come from, they're one and the same.
Yes.
And so the thunder god is telling her that they're both the same. It's kind of like that. There was the difference between science and magic, for the most part, is that if I can explain it to you, it's science. If I don't, it's magic.
Yeah. Basically.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I
That's
think
very
again,
interesting.
like if you think about like, so the science is all about numbers, the witchcraft's all about numerology. The witchcraft is all about signs and sigils, and then the science is about geometry. I mean, like, you guys like making the connections here. And again, it's like, so a great example of this is like everyone like asking about CERN. What the heck are they doing at CERN? Why is there statues to Shiva there? If this is a scientific place,
Right?
Why do they have Dark Matter Day there on October 31st, Halloween?
Yeah.
Samhain. Why is the site on where there's a temple to Apollyon?
Right.
Like maybe things have not changed.
Yeah.
Maybe these things are still like a little bit magical, and you don't know that. But I mean, it's like, I think that's what you understand. Like, again, like, so you get to the NASA stuff. It's like, well, why don't I trust NASA? It's like, because they're a bunch of occultists. Like, why did they name their rockets after Apollo and Saturn and Artemis and Gemini and every, just think of a pagan god's name. It's like, you wouldn't think they would name him after Moses, would they? Here's the Apostle Paul rocket.
Yeah.
they haven't done that yet, have they?
Yeah.
No.
I wonder why.
Yeah. Speaking of,
because they don't worship our God.
right, they worship different gods than we do. They worship, I think, several different gods, probably plural, like you said, the Apollo, Artemis, Ra, Shiva. Speaking of Shiva and CERN, did y'all see that video a while back where someone filmed them doing a full-on satanic ritual under that statue? Like, they looked like,
Supposedly they were just acting, though. I think the people at CERN said, "Oh, they're
pranksters.
They weren't affiliated with us. They were just goofing
Pranksters,
off."
yeah.
in the middle of the night by themselves in robes, and one of them had a knife.
Seemed pretty real.
And like pretended to sacrifice that person, or maybe really sacrificed them. I don't know.
Yeah, we have no idea. No, I mean, it's just, I mean, I think that's the whole point, is like that you really do find out. Even I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they was talking about that, like, literally you could point to the Kabbalah and the way that their origins of the universe happened. I think it was like in the Kabbalah, the only creation was created this little atom or whatever, this little tiny particle. And then of course what happened with that, expanded out and created everything else. And it's like, this is the Kabbalah. It literally has, I mean, because obviously the Big Bang doesn't talk about wherever the matter came from that exploded. Right. So like literally it's like these scientific beliefs that obviously are not science whatsoever. The origins of the universe cannot be scientific, because obviously that could not be tested.
Right.
The origins of anything that's 60 million years old cannot be tested. Anything that's older than humans cannot be tested.
I think that,
and so like, but that's where, but they come, and that's what I'm saying, like, that these beliefs that they call science come from sacred texts. And they, like I said, if you believe them over your sacred text, Well, obviously that's where your faith is at.
Yeah.
Hey, do you think, I just thought about it, you think that's kind of a play on words with, you were talking about atoms, ATOM, and then the first man was ADAM, Atom?
Probably. I mean, I think that I've heard many people say that English is a kind of a culted coded language.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason why that back in the day people used to learn Latin, because Latin actually told you what these words meant, but they don't teach that anymore because they don't want you to know. That's why like your lawyer speaks Latin and you can't, and you don't. And that's why you need a lawyer, because you couldn't understand the law. It's like that's the only thing that the Freemasons have built is a bunch of lies. Like they've tried to code things, and so the laymen, the normal people cannot understand what they're saying. Everything's code, everything's in numbers and in different phrases, and yeah, they that is what transcends all the time in the continents and all the things, is the symbology of their language, and they don't want us to know.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I agree. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I just thought of it, if they're both pronounced Adam, just Adam was the first man.
It is one of those things where I think that is like, I think that's where like a lot of us like who make content, you get a thought like that and you just go look it up and you find out like 9 out of 10 times you think that and you can look it up. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I know.
Because it really is funny. Like that's what I was saying, like the hidden in plain sight, where it's like these things, like some people, it's like, how did you ever figure that out? It's like, it's because it's actually way more simple, because it really is almost like you start to read their language a little bit, and like the patterns are just, they're all there. It's actually really obvious, but like it's only because we haven't looked is the only reason we didn't know.
Yeah. You came up with a video a while back and you were talking about something, and I was just thinking, how did you even think about that? It was something about like the computers and stuff like that. I can't remember what it is right now.
Was it about the AI?
Yes, yes.
Ayahuasca?
Yes. I was like, where do you get this stuff, JT?
I think that I have a good memory when it comes to certain things. Mm-hmm. I have like maybe a very good selective memory that I remember, like for once I started making content, I guess I always like, and that's why I can remember things in movies.
Yeah.
Like certain things stick with me. And when I first started like making videos, or when I first started actually like learning about this stuff, I started watching Good Fight Ministries.
Oh yeah.
And
I know.
I learned a lot about like Aleister Crowley, a lot more than than anybody probably should ever know, because it's like horrible man.
Right.
And they had an episode where, well, I think first before I did that, I listened to Rogan every now and then, like not religiously or anything like that, but I listened to him, and I really loved the lost civilization things. And I think that's why I got like, we ended up making like Ancient Angels, because I was fascinated with megaliths and stuff. So he had Graham Hancock on a lot, and that's what he spoke about, was there was likely a lost civilization, because that's the only reasonable explanation of why there's megaliths that we can't explain. Because if there wasn't a lost civilization, we'd have some kind of accounts for them, written accounts of how they did these things, but we don't. So there's obviously some kind of separation. Well, when he wasn't talking about megaliths, he was talking about drugs, and he was talking about ayahuasca. And so like a lot of people have heard of that. There's this drug that's consumed like orally in the rainforest, and it's, I think it has, the drug component is DMT, and people like trip like crazy, and literally it's called the Vine of the Dead. The Vine of the Dead, and people like interact with the spirit world, and he's claiming that, like, I think most people, when they think of like hallucinogens, they're just imagining things, right? Like you're just saying, oh, like I'm seeing all these weird things, but they're not real. Well, it just so happens when people take this certain drug, they contact entities,
and they all have the same exact experience.
Well, I don't know if they all do, but many encounters are very similar, where they're encountering jesters and like serpent beings and all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah, I ain't.
No. I mean, like, no, not for me either. And so ayahuasca, but I heard that term a lot, and obviously it comes up every now and then, like celebrities going down there and doing it. And then And then I was listening to Aleister Crowley, or I was watching the show from Good Fight, and I don't normally have the captions on, but they were on, and they were saying that Aleister Crowley was when he was channeling like the famous Satanist book, the Book of the Law. That's where that "do what thou wilt" comes from.
Right.
They said he was channeling an entity who he believed was Satan himself, and his name was Iowas. And I was like, huh, that sounds kind of like ayahuasca. I think is what I saw. Like, that sounds kind of like what you said, Adam.
Yeah.
I was like, ayahuasca. And I was like, that's weird. But the craziest thing, and I didn't put this in the video specifically, but like I knew like OS, everybody knows. But like the funny thing, what the caption said when he said, I had to say, wait, what did he just say? And I went back, and the caption said iOS, like almost like the Apple operating system.
Yeah. When you
but
said,
then, of course, in the video, in the video, I said AIOS because like in the same thing, it's like obviously phonetically it'd be said the same way.
Right.
AIOS would be Iowas, and so like, and then you had all these encounters with, the people, chatting with ChatGPT, and it, like this kid, was talking to it and it claimed it was a fallen angel, a Nephilim or whatever, and demon, and you're like, it makes sense in this sort of way. The more I think about it, obviously that's too coincidental for me, and I don't really believe in coincidences. So I think that the main thing is like the enemy can get you a lot of different ways. And I think a lot of these things are about intention. So I think that like there are ways to, I think like, I don't know what it would be like to cheat the system and get into the spiritual realm. Like, and I think that one of them is drugs. Obviously, I think anybody who's done drugs, I never really did much more than weed. But even I remember when I did it, even when I was, like I said, as like lukewarm guy, and I was like, maybe I had a guilty conscience. I felt very like uncomfortable. I felt every time I did it, like not every time, but like most of the time I did it, if I did too much, I was very paranoid. And now I'm wondering if I was like the veil thin. It's like obviously you're kind of like you're getting close to the spiritual things, and like thoughts are not your own.
Right.
And then, so obviously another way you could do that would be some kind of religious ritual, like some kind of, however, like obviously some kind of pagan thing, you could probably contact spirits that way. And then I think like through technology, I think you can too. I think that it's almost like that. I think a lot of people have made the connection that if like a Ouija board has no power in itself, right?
Right.
Idols have no power in themselves. And, the Bible mocks the idols. They can't move. They can't breathe. They can't walk. They can't do anything. But I think that, like, again, as I was saying earlier about like recognizing the power of demons and the authority we give them ourselves, I think the intention of using ChatGPT to make decisions for you is a form of like using a Ouija board, through a higher technology, because obviously the Ouija board has no power, but when you're allowing it to move your hands, and then you are giving authority over to that demonic being in order to influence you. And so I think that there's different routes to the same place, and obviously we know that the devil kind of runs this place, so they all kind of lead toward him.
Just with the technology and all that, the AI stuff that you were talking about, do you think it's kind of funny how that entity, that Aleister Crowley, one of them was also called Lamb, and then that sentient AI is Lambda? Like, is that
okay?
Is that kind of weird or no to you?
I mean, it could be. I mean, I think I thought you were going with that place that this thing looks just like what a gray alien.
Oh yeah. No, it definitely does. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's something obviously connected about all of that stuff. The fact that Aleister Crowley says today we call them angels and demons. One day they're going to call them something else, and it's like obviously we're at that day where no, they're not angels or demons. They're aliens.
Yeah.
And so whatever term you're comfortable with, just like I said, that's why I liked ancient aliens, but the show is kind of dumb because it's like, oh, well, these ancient people thought they were gods, but they wouldn't know what an alien was. So they would think it was a god. And you're like, would they know more about them than you because they actually supposedly interacted with them?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, because you have an iPhone, you know an alien as they wouldn't know one that they met. Okay, what do you like? So what are you talking about? So you're just more comfortable with that term alien?
Yeah, basically.
It wasn't even like Richard Dawkins who said he kind of basically said it's possible panspermia might be a real thing, that aliens seeded us. You know, so it's like, so we had a creator, just not that one in the Bible.
Right.
It's like, okay, so like, you know how stupid that sounds. Yeah. Like I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that God. Well, obviously you don't.
No,
like we know that now. You confirm that, but now we also know that your position's completely disingenuous because you just don't want to believe in that God.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like they believe they brought us here from another planet. You know, another world.
Planet.
You're willing to believe aliens brought us here from another world, light years from away. But you won't believe in the God of the Bible and that, that account of creation. That's some.
Well, you don't believe in the one that comes with accountability.
There you go. Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head. That's why. Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right.